Welcome to the Pro Wrestling Push Me Poll for August 1990, wrestling's only objective, weighted, data-driven ranking system based on which pro wrestlers were getting the biggest push across the industry in a given month and year. As expected, the WWF completely dominates this month's top 10 as they present the third of their Big Four pay-per-view supercards, SummerSlam, which garners double points for all the big players. World champion, the Ultimate Warrior, and number one contender, Ravishing Rick Rude, remain numbers 1 and 2, as they were last month, following up July's inconclusive Saturday night's main event TV match with a feud-ending cage match that main evented SummerSlam. I will give Warrior and Rude credit, as unsatisfying as the build-up to this match had been over the last couple of months. Warrior's weird promos, Rude's injury, and then Warrior kicking out of the Rude Awakening last month. They pulled out a good match here, a surprisingly good match, that I'm making my match of the month for August. Overshadowed in many ways by the other half of the show's double main event, we'll get to that in a moment. Warrior and Rude went on last and didn't disappoint, stepping up with a very good cage match worthy of the main event spot. This was the fourth high-profile singles match between these two in the last 2 years, and it starts at the top of the cage with a slugfest as Warrior climbs in and slams Rude into the cage, busting him open early. Rude rallies and takes control, slamming Warrior into the cage too. He attempts the Rude Awakening, but Warrior powers out of it. Warrior then goes for a big splash, but Rude gets his knees up. He hits the Rude Awakening, but instead of going for the door, opts to climb the cage and come off the top to punish Warrior. It's a mistake as Warrior catches him the second time and crawls to the door. But manager Bobby Heenan slams it in his face. Warrior's busted open now too, and both men are down. Rude crawls to the door now, and Heenan tries to pull him out, but Warrior pulls Heenan in, gives him an atomic drop, then hits clotheslines and a press slam to Rude, and Warrior climbs out of the cage to retain the belt and definitively win the program and celebrate as the show goes off the air. Credit goes to both men for stepping up and delivering when they needed to after a somewhat faltering start to their headline feud. Next, at Numbers 3 and 4 for August, we have the second half of SummerSlam's double main event, Hulk Hogan and Earthquake. This was Hogan's big comeback match after Earthquake put him on the shelf with a series of earthquake splashes a few months back that was sold like death and that had been presented as putting Hogan's entire future in doubt. It was presented as just as big a deal, in fact probably more so, than the Warrior Rude main event. Quake and his corner man Dino Bravo had put Hogan's initial corner man Tugboat on the shelf, so Hogan brought in the Big Boss Man as his number 2, and they are both crazy over here. Boss Man makes number 7 on this month's list, and Dino Bravo makes number 8 as a result of their high-profile involvement here. To the match itself, an Earthquake gets the best of a test of strength and targets Hogan's hurt back and ribs with elbow drops and a Boston Crab. Hogan rallies and tries a slam, but his back gives out. Quake falls on top of him, then hits a bear hug. Hulk's down and Quake goes for 2 Earthquake splashes, but Hogan incredibly kicks out. He hulks up, he slams him. He goes for the leg drop, but Dino Bravo and manager Jimmy Hart are in to disrupt the count, and it all breaks down. Bossman gets involved, Hogan slams Quake at ringside and gets a count-out win. Hogan soaks in the cheers, the Hulkster's back, but he doesn't get a definitive pin, and the feud continues. In an interesting side note, the reason Tugboat was pulled as Hogan's corner man and replaced by Bossman in storyline terms is because they were going to have Tugboat turn heel and align with Earthquake against Hogan, but that plan was nixed. Tugboat's heel turn was delayed, and they went with continuing the Hogan-Earthquake feud for longer instead because it was going over really well. Number 5 for August is the Texas Tornado Kerry Von Erich, who upsets Mr. Perfect, in at number 6, to win the Intercontinental title on the SummerSlam undercard. This was another match other than initially advertised, as Perfect had been slated to defend the IC title against Brutus, the Barber Beefcake, the man who handed him his first loss at WrestleMania 6. But Brutus's face had been caved in a horrible boating parasailing accident, and Beefcake would not wrestle again for a long time. So the Texas Tornado, just 1 month after making his debut for the WWF, was inserted in against Perfect as a substitute. He overpowers Perfect from the start and is already hugely over with the crowd, as Perfect oversells all of Kerry's offense like a champ. As usual, Perfect mounts a comeback with a sleeper hold, but Tornado slingshots him into the post, gets a claw hold and discus punch, and we have ourselves a surprise new Intercontinental champion. Fun match, and actually the whole SummerSlam card was just a really fun event. Nothing here matched the quality or epic scale of Hogan Warrior at WrestleMania 6, but overall, SummerSlam 90 was a better, more consistent show. The Big Boss Man and Dino Bravo at numbers 7 and 8 we've covered. Hogan could have done a lot more to put Bossman over after his match and really solidify Bossman in the top tier of company faces, but he largely ignored him during his post-match celebration and left the Bossman standing around looking like a bit of a spare prick, but, well, that's Hogan for you. Gotta protect that spot, and he was already seemingly having buyer's remorse about having put Warrior over so strongly at Mania, cutting a post-match promo about how he's coming back for his title again. The show always has to revolve around Hulk Hogan, even when he's not the champion. Finally, for the WWF at number 9 are Tag Team Champions Demolition, Axe, Smash, and Crush. Now, Demolition dropped the doubles belts to the Hart Foundation at SummerSlam in a great best-of-3 falls match, but they held the belts for most of the month and were actually pretty protected in that loss. Smash and Crush are the two designated wrestlers representing the Demolition faction here, and the champions win the first fall with the Demolition decapitation. Bret Hart makes the hot tag to Jim Neidhart, and they hit the heart attack, but Crush attacks to draw a DQ. Fall 3 and Demolition's third man Axe runs out to hide beneath the ring. Demolition take turns triple teaming until new signings, the Legion of Doom, Hawk and Animal, come out to protest, drag Axe from under the ring, and shove Crush off the top, leading to a Hart Foundation double team, winning the third fall and becoming two-time tag team champions. So the Hart Foundation won the match, but it was clear that the primary tag team program going forward was now Demolition versus the Legion of Doom. This had long been a dream match. Demolition had long been seen as the WWF's second-rate version of the Road Warriors, and now that the Road Warriors, who had been treading water in the NWA for the last 6 months, had finally signed to the WWF as the LOD, fans were finally getting that dream match, whether the titles were involved or not. Bubbling under for the WWF this month were the rest of the wrestlers on the SummerSlam undercard. Hacksaw Jim Duggan teamed with recently face-turned Nikolai Volkov to beat the Orient Express. Jake the Snake Roberts beat Bad News Brown by DQ. Macho King Randy Savage beat Dusty Rhodes after Ted DiBiase bought Dusty's valet Sapphire, leaving the Dream distraught. Sensational Sherry had earlier beat Sapphire by forfeit when Sapphire didn't show up for her match. The new heel team of Power and Glory, Hercules and Paul Roma, beat the Rockers in the opener, the Warlord beat Tito Santana, and Circular Slaughter returned on the Brother Love Show as a heel after a few years in the wilderness in the AWA. Turning our attention, finally, away from the WWF to the only non-WWF wrestler making this month's top 10 is Sting, rounding us out at number 10. Sting was the new NWA World Champion, having beat Ric Flair at the Great American Bash last month, and while he was facing Flair in rematches on the house show circuit, on TV Sting was challenged for next month's Clash of the Champions 12 show by a mysterious figure from his past known as the Black Scorpion. More on that infamous development next month. Flair and TV champion Arn Anderson were for now focusing the Horsemen's attention on U.S. champion Lex Luger, with Flair challenging Luger to a match at the Clash to win the U.S. title and secure a formal rematch against Sting as #1 contender. Outside of this month's top 10 over in New Japan, veteran Riki Choshu beat Big Van Vader to regain the IWGP title at Summer Night Fever 2 in a good match, ending Vader's dominant year-long run at the top of New Japan. At the same show, Pegasus Kid Chris Benoit beat Jushin Liger to win the IWGP Junior Heavyweight title. Keiji Muto and Masahiro Chono remained IWGP Tag Team Champions. In All Japan, Stan Hansen was once again the company's Triple Crown champion, while former champ Jumbo Tsuruta rallied his Tsuruta Gun stable of veterans against upstart Mitsuharu Misawa's Super Generation army of young challengers. The AJPW World Tag Team titles were declared vacant when the Great Kabuki became the latest wrestler to leave All Japan and join Genichiro Tenryu's emerging new Super World Sports venture. In Mexico's EMLL, Ringo Mendoza and El Faraon were the top featured technicos this month, Massacre and MS1 the most featured rudos. In the U.S. territories, the USWA title was declared vacant when Champion the Snowman no-showed a number of events. The Memphis and Dallas territories had become almost entirely separate at this point, with Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee feuding with Eddie Gilbert and Tony Anthony in Memphis, and Chris Adams feuding with a young Steve Austin in Dallas. In Portland, the Grappler won the vacant Pacific Northwest title over Scotty the Body. Finally, the AWA recorded its last ever TV shows, with AWA champion Larry Zbyszko's Larry's Legends team winning the infamous and bamboozling Team Challenge series, which had dominated the last few months of AWA's existence. The company wouldn't formally close until early next year, but for all intents and purposes, this was it for what had at one time been one of the big three of U.S. wrestling, with Larry Zbyszko, AWA owner Vern Agani's son-in-law, leaving with the belt and signing with the NWA, so a somewhat sad month for wrestling in those terms. But overall, August 1990 was all about SummerSlam, and it was a strong and successful show, with Warrior and Hogan now clearly in a power struggle over who would be the face of the company going forward. Thanks for listening. Please like, share, subscribe, check out all the video links to the matches discussed in the description, and join me next time for September 1990, where we'll get our first glimpse of Sting's first challenger, the Black Scorpion, at Clash of the Champions 12. Cheers.